Yeah, it's okay. I think Vishnu can allow participants to come in.
Sure. So we'll start the Vishnu. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rakhi. I'm the Regional Director of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much and welcome you all for joining us for today's session on opportunities in education sector in the Indo-US corridor. Today, we have all the industry stalwarts joining us as our speaker and panelists and moderator for this session today. So what we did is we have shared their detailed profile while we have shared our invitation with you all. So just to keep in mind our, the paucity of time, we will have the introduction of each one of our speaker very, very brief. Right now, I would request our regional president, Mr. Pankaj Bora, to kindly formally welcome you all for today's session. Mr. Pankaj Bora is the regional president of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, West India Council. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you very much. Good evening to all our members and guests, and good morning to all our participants from North America. I'm Pankaj Bora, the Regional President of West India Council of IACC. On behalf of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, I welcome you all to this very important and informative digital session on opportunities in education sector in Indo-US corridor. I also welcome our keynote speaker of today's program and all eminent panelists who are going to share their thoughts and experiences and views on this subject of the webinar. Honorable Minister of Higher Education and Technical Education, Government of Maharashtra, was to join us in this webinar, but he has an unscheduled meeting with the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, and he'll be delayed a little bit. So as and when he joins, he will be addressing us. As you are aware, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is an apex bilateral chamber promoting trade, commerce, and investments between India and USA. Our chamber was founded 53 years ago, and in these 53 years, business communities of India and USA, they have grown their businesses with each other, and our bilateral trade and investment have come to a very significant level. I'm pleased to share with you that USA has emerged largest trading partner with India in 2019. The significant sectors which have contributed for this rise is defense and security systems, trade of machineries and chemicals, gems and jewelries, textiles, and recently natural gas and energy. But one sector which has still not picked up is education sector. And we see a vast potential in this sector. India is the second largest education market in the world. The estimated market size is around, at present market size is around 115 billion US dollars. We have 500 million students in the age group of 5 to 24 years, out of which 37 million students are already enrolled for higher and technical education. It is expected that Indian education sector will grow at the rate of 12% per annum, and it seems we will be surpassing China in time to come. In spite of this massive demand, present higher and technical education system is somehow unable to provide the employable output. the major reason of the inability is our 95% educational institutions are in unorganized sector. And there is the absence of large players. This is where our chamber can see a gap and opportunity for the large foreign universities to play a role in Indian education sector. Though the foreign direct investment was allowed in the education sector, but somehow it has not picked up so far. The reason this sector was highly regulated. Scores of permissions were required to enter Indian education sector. But the recent National Education Policy 2020, this has liberalized Indian education sector. Now, Government of India has allowed select foreign universities, say top 100 global universities, to set up their campuses in India. Similarly, they have also allowed good performing Indian institutions to have their campuses abroad. With this development, we thought this is an appropriate time that we invite all the experts on this subject and impart knowledge to our members that there is a distinct opportunity in education sector between India and USA. So before I move on to today's program, I would also like to introduce you to our associate partners. Our associate partner, Lions Clubs International Foundation. This foundation is headquartered in Chicago and has a subsidiary in Mumbai. Lions Club International Foundation supports over 286,000 Lions and their work in communities across India. This organization is doing considerable work in education sector in India through their Lions Quest program and is also helping the Indian corporate sector to meet their CSR goals. Our another associate partner of today's program is Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is our MOU partner. We have been very closely working together in furtherance of our common objectives. On behalf of ISCC, I welcome Ms. Anita Nanan, the chairperson and immediate past president of Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. She has joined us from USA. And our another associate partner, Ascent Overseas Education. This organization provides end-to-end admission support to students aspiring for foreign education. Ascent Overseas has its business network spread all across India and in the Middle East countries. So I'm thankful to all our associate partners for supporting us in organizing today's program. And now, without much ado, I would like to invite our keynote speaker of the day, Mr. Ryan Pereira. Mr. Ryan Pereira will enlighten us on present status of education sector in India and the vast opportunities available in this sector for India and US educational institutions. A brief introduction of Mr. Ryan Pereira. Mr. Ryan Pereira is the regional officer at United States India Educational Foundation, where he supervises Education USA and Fulbright programs in the Western India. Ryan is a Bachelor of Science in Geology and Biochemistry from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. He did his MSc in Biochemistry from Mumbai University, and he did PhD in Biochemistry from the Ohio State University, USA. Ryan was also postdoctoral fellow and research associate in the Department of Molecular Medicine at Cornell University. Presently, Ryan is guiding students interested in pursuing higher studies in USA. So I would like to invite Mr. Ryan Pereira. Thank you very much for sparing your time and joining us this evening. And before Mr. Ryan starts his presentation, I have a request to all the participants. They can post their questions on Q&A box, and all our participants, all our speakers would be happy to reply your questions. So, Mr. Ryan, it's over to you.
Thank you, Pankaj, for that introduction and for having me as part of this presentation on higher studies and opportunities in the Indo-US corridor. I'll be talking a little bit about the opportunities in the education sector with an emphasis on fostering linkages between the Indian institutes and the global institutes, and emphasis will be on the Fulbright Fellowships and how they can help foster these linkages. A little bit about my organization. The United States India Educational Foundation promotes the mutual understanding between the nationals of India and the United States through the educational exchanges of outstanding scholars, professionals, and students. And we accomplish this by a variety of ways. We administer the Fulbright, Nehru, and other fellowships for Indian and American students, faculty, researchers, and professionals. We also offer Education USA advising services for Indian students interested in pursuing higher studies in the US, and by serving as a resource for fostering linkages between Indian institutions in the United States and in India. As Pankaj mentioned, these are very exciting times in the Indian education sector in India. With the advent of the new education policy, which was released last year, there are several opportunities for global universities to partner with Indian universities. Some of these, as Pankaj mentioned, also includes the opportunity for the universities, the global universities, to open campuses in India. However, the far greater opportunity comes in the lower down in the policy, where with the planned introduction of the 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor's program, where the students get to choose subjects, this will offer the students the opportunity of better preparing them for the workforce as well as for higher studies abroad. US universities have been offering such courses for a long time and can assist Indian universities adapt to these changes. An even more interesting development happened within the last week, and this was the UGC draft on joint degrees, where UGC, the University Grants Commission, they published the draft on the academic collaborations between Indian and foreign higher education institutions to offer joint degree, dual degree, and twinning programs. These are the regulations of 2021. And the reason this is so important is because through this draft, there will be 4 types of academic collaborations that will be allowed. The first one being the credit recognition and transfer, so that if somebody does a course abroad, that course will be recognized by the Indian government. Then they are also offering the possibility of offering a joint degree with a global institution. The twinning arrangement is, there are a number of twinning arrangements already in play, but here they're going to formalize it. And they're also going to formalize the ability to offer a dual degree program. So these are very interesting developments that have happened very recently. A point to keep in mind is that these regulations are not applicable to programs offered in the online or the distance learning mode. And the second aspect to keep in mind about this draft is that franchisee arrangements will not be allowed under these collaborations. So those are 2 points to keep in mind regarding the draft that has just come out. So the US universities, there are multiple ways where universities have already established these collaborations. The 2 most common ones are, first, the US universities using their inbuilt contacts with their faculty, who already have contacts with Indian institutions or research houses. They will come in, set up an office, and start this formal collaborations. Just giving some examples include the Columbia Global Center, which was opened in 2010 in Mumbai. And we also have in Mumbai the Harvard Chan India Research Center, which helps projects of public health for the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and research projects in India. In addition, Indian institutions also have collaborations where they have academic and collaborative research projects, such as ISER Pune has with the University of Notre Dame, and NMIMS, deemed to be university, has faculty from Virginia Tech coming to teach programs at the Mukesh Patil Engineering College here. Some have taken it a step further by having well-established offices in India, such as the Ohio State University, which has established an India Gateway in Mumbai. And there they use that gateway to promote collaborations with both institutions as well as with the companies. For example, they have a very well-established program with the Nanavati Hospital in Mumbai on public health. And as part of that, they, in 2019, December, they did a conference on infectious diseases. And just last week, they also formalized an arrangement, an agreement with the Tata Group, where, and that's the photograph that you can see, where they're going to, the Fisher School of Business is going to have some of their students come and do some projects for the Tata Group. And also they're going to work on the executive training of the Tata managers. So it's still a work in progress, but it's a step in the right direction. And there are so many more examples of US universities that have already taken this, formalizing some collaborations with Indian universities. The second route that the universities can take is by using an organization that helps build these bridges. USIEF has been for 70 years one of such organization. And the classic example of that was the recently concluded 21st Century Knowledge Initiative that helped build a number of collaborations and the ongoing Fulbright program that I'll talk about in just a minute. In addition, we have the Institute of International Education that does a lot of good work in building these collaborations. They bring in delegations from the US to meet with concerned people in India at institutions. Then we have in 2018, the Sanam S4 and formed an organization called the US-India Knowledge Exchange, which also helped helping the collaboration between Indian and US institutions. And the more recent effort is taken by Partnership 2020. This is a US government effort where they want to leverage the US-India cooperation in higher education. And here they have, there's a very good link there where they have, for 3 years, US institutes can get grants to formalize some cooperation in research or in academia with Indian institutions. And they've also got a very, very good website where one can look a map, where they've mapped all the current collaborations that have taken place between Indian institutes and the US institutes. So that's what's going on with the Partnerships 2020. For the rest of the talk, I just want to touch base about the Fulbright program and how the Fulbright Fellowships can help build these bridges. So for 70 years, USIEF has been offering the Fulbright Fellowships in India. This year, we have recently, just last week, we've made call for applications. And we have a wide range of grants that we're going to be giving. These include the Fulbright Nehru Fellowships for the master's, doctoral, and the postdoctoral fellowships. and the academic and professional excellence. In addition, we have the Fulbright Column Doctoral, Postdoctoral, and Academic Professional Excellence Award for climate change. Then we have all these Fulbright Nehru and Fulbright Column fellowships are jointly funded by the US government and the Indian government. And we also have specific grants that are still funded exclusively by the US government. These include the Hubert Humphreys Fellow, the Foreign Language Teaching Assistant Program, and 2 awards for the school teachers, the Distinguished Awards in Teaching Program and the Teaching Excellence Achievement Award. And we also have the Fulbright Scholar in Residence Program. I want to just end with the Fulbright Nehru International Education Administrators Seminar. So this is a 2-week program where higher education officials, the deans and the university officials, get to travel to the US, visit 10 or so US institutes. And the idea is to learn about those institutes and start the process of formalizing any cooperative agreements if there's a match. And just like the Indian folks, administrators go to the US, we also have a delegation from the US universities come and visit various institutes in India. So this is the photograph of the delegation that came in 2019 visiting ISER Pune. And finally, I'll end with 2 small programs we have. One is the Fulbright Nehru Specialist Program, where if an Indian institute wants to have a specialist come to teach a module at their institute, they could put in an application, and the point of contact is Dr. Girish Kaul. And another program that we are going to be announcing very shortly is the Fulbright Nehru Visiting Chair Fellowship. And here the US university will host an Indian scholar on campus with the idea that the Indian scholar will help start the process of formalizing the collaborations between the Indian host institute in India and the US institute. So thank you very much. My contact information is on the slide.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira, for this presentation and for sharing this very important information. Thank you once again. I would like to interact with you on a few questions which we have received from our participants and would like to have your insight on the same.
Sure.
So with your permission, Mr. Pereira, do you think that India should have some fellowships like the Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Fellowship for Indian and American students, academicians, scholars, and professionals? Your views on the same.
Thank you, Saurabh, for that question. Yes, for sure, we should be having such fellowships. For 70 years, USIF has been administering these fellowships, and so far we've given almost 19,000 fellowships. These fellowships help promote the mutual understanding between the nationals of India and the US, and through the educational exchange of such scholars. So yes, we should have more of such fellowships.
Thank you. Your foundation, does the foundation serve as a resource, as a catalyst for fostering linkage between India and US in terms of the higher education institutions?
Yes, USIF does continue to explore viable ways in which we may respond to requests for such services from both Indian and the US universities interested in such linkages. And we continue to reach out to underserved regions and communities. And examples of the programs that we've administered include the ones I mentioned, the 21st Century Knowledge Initiative, the soon to be announced Visiting Chair Program, the International Education Administrator Seminar, and the Fulbright Specialist Programs. So there are a number of ways we're involved with building such linkages.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And here we have one more question, and that is pertaining to how Indo-US education corridor can be leveraged to provide real-world opportunities to first-generation entrepreneurs in scaling up the business, and also learn about international nuances of creating transnational organizations, which US has pioneered over a century. What do you say?
That's a little more challenging for me to answer. I would defer to somebody far more adept at that, such as Shailesh Gandhi, who would be more give more expertise on such a question.
Fine. All right. Mr. Pereira, since you have the experience of studying in Mumbai University as well as in Ohio State University, can you share with us this evening what are the points of differences in terms of approach or in terms of experience, sir?
That's a very interesting question. It's been over 20 years since I've been a student at the Mumbai University and the Ohio State University, and a lot has changed since I was a student at these institutions. That being said, there are some notable differences while I was studying at these universities. The first difference that I noticed was the flexibility of the education system in the US, where I got to pick and choose courses that would provide me the skills and knowledge that I required for my career. In addition, a US education teaches you how to conduct in-depth research and work across disciplines, and work in teams. Think critically, analyze problems, and communicate clearly across cultures. So the final thing that I would note was that in the US, there's a free exchange of ideas and knowledge, something that's not seen a lot of in the Indian classrooms. I will end by saying that the new NEP addresses some of these issues that are seen on the Indian campus.
Very well. Just the last question. Your foundation, does it offer a fresh perspective in educational advising, fellowship support, and facilitating academic dialogue between US and India?
Yeah, Education USA, USIF is the Education USA Advising Center affiliated with the US Department of State, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So we do offer the educational advising services for students interested in higher studies in the US. As a US Department of State affiliated Education USA Advising Center, we strive to provide accurate, comprehensive, and current information on educational opportunities in the US. We do not endorse or rank any college or university, nor do we endorse services provided by any company or organization in the areas of test prep, admissions, placement, or the visa procurement. So we do help with this process, but we have to focus on what the Education USA policies are.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pereira, for spending your valuable time this evening with us, and we look forward to have you with us again. With this, I will hand over back to Mr. Bora to take the proceedings further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, and thank you, Mr. Ryan Pereira, for your very informative presentation. I hope all our participants are benefited by the information provided by you. Now, moving on to today's session, we will be having panel discussion on today's subject, opportunities in education sector in Indo-US corridor. We have a galaxy of panelists with us. They are all accomplished educationists or professionals in their respective fields. And today they will share with us their experiences and their views on present status of Indian education sector and what are the opportunities available for the in this Indo-US education sector. Today we have with us Mr. Michael Schoenfeld. Mr. Michael is the Vice President, Public Affairs and Government Relations of prestigious Duke University, USA. Welcome, Mr. Michael. Welcome to our program. Mr. Michael is also a visiting faculty to Stanford School of Public Policy. Thank you. Our second panelist is Professor Sailesh Gandhi. Professor Sailesh Gandhi is a respected name in Indian business schools. Professor Gandhi was the Dean of Programs at IIM Ahmedabad, and at present, he is a Director of IIM Ahmedabad's Dubai branch. Professor Gandhi has been involved in designing management development programs for many educational institutions in India and abroad. Welcome, sir. Welcome to our program today. We have another panelist, Dr. Aditya Abhyankar. Dr. Aditya Abhyankar is Dean, Faculty of Technology and Professor at Department of Technology, SP, Pune University. Dr. Abhyankar did his PhD from Clarkson University, New York, and at present he is associated with the same university as a research associate. We have one more eminent speaker today, panelist, Dr. John Conway. Dr. John Conway is a well-known writer and is a co-founder of American Communication International. He is also co-founder of RK March American Writing Center. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
And I'm pleased to inform all of you that today's panel discussion would be moderated by our moderator, Danish Farooqi. Danish Kamal Farooqi is a partner and founding member of global education practice at Eliki Consulting. Danish is a dedicated educational sector specialist with over 11 years of experience. He advises private equity investors and leading education companies on market growth, potential investment decisions, and market entry decisions. So I'm happy to invite Danish, you to take over and help and enlighten all our participants on this subject of opportunities in education sector.
Thank you, Mr. Bora. Thank you so much for the introductions, and thank you, IICC, for organizing such a pertinent discussion around the opportunities for investment in the Indo-US corridor as far as education is concerned. Let me set the ball rolling by setting the context of why I think this is a very interesting topic for discussion. I actually think there is a little bit of a conundrum as I think about, why there are not many more American institutions and more partnerships when it comes to India's education sector broadly, but specifically even in higher education. Why is that the case? 3 data points I'll talk about. Point number 1, if you look at education sector globally and in India, it is what you would call a hot sector when it comes to investment. You would find a number of investors of all hue and shapes and sizes, private equity, venture capital, etc., investing in the education space. The number of deals have increased 4x over the last sort of decade, and India has seen its fair share of those investments. So that's data point number 1. Data point number 2 is that there is still a massive unmet need when it comes to India's education requirements, specifically if you talk of higher ed. So at LEK, here's what we did. We looked at, we were trying to explain what really explains the wealth of nations. And we looked at various parameters. We ran regression on a number of variables, and here's what we found. We found that 70% of a country's wealth can actually be explained by its level of GER, the gross enrollment ratio, or the participation in higher education. That means if India wants to grow going forward in GDP terms, it has to invest in developing seats in higher education. Just to give you some numbers, India currently is around that 28-29% of gross enrollment ratio. For it to achieve its the basic growth targets, it needs to have somewhere between 35 to 37% gross enrollment ratio, which means every year we need to add 1 million to 1.5 million seats in higher education. So there clearly is a need. So we've got something that's a hot sector of investment. There is a lot of need in India. And third, Indians actually like American education. So Mr. Bora mentioned earlier that there isn't a lot of investment that has happened or trade that has happened between India and US as far as education is concerned. But that's only because you're looking at the formal investment route. But if you look at the number of Indian students going abroad, currently there are about 150K students, 150,000 Indian students that are studying in US in higher education. Now, if you put all of these 3 things together, plus the various initiatives that the government has taken to make education participation more attractive for foreign institutions in India, you should, you would imagine a situation where you have a lot of these partnerships, either already in existence or forming up. But we see none of that happening. We actually see, Ryan talked about various forms of partnerships in his presentation earlier, but these are none of them are at large scale. You don't find the likes of participation. For example, you've got the likes of New York University in Abu Dhabi. You've got you've got Doha, where a lot of higher education institutions have set up campuses. You've got, as Professor Gandhi would talk about, in Dubai, a number of higher education institutions from across the world setting up their institutions there. You've got Monash in Malaysia that has about 10,000 students. You've got RMIT in Vietnam, that has very successful programs there. Why is it in India, with all the need for all the opportunities, why is it in India that we've not been able to achieve that? That's the context for the discussion today. And I'll throw it open with this question to my panelists. Dr. Conway, why don't we, I'll go in the order of the names that I'm seeing on the screen. So sorry to put you on the spot there, but why don't you, roll off the discussion for us with your views on why is this happening?
Hi, Dinesh. Thanks a lot. I guess I'm here to be put on the spot, so that's okay. I think, and I checked out a lot of what you spoke about on the LEK website, and the really interesting interviews that you conducted with folks who are doing innovation in the education space. And I'll try to make this succinct. I'm coming from traditional academia, for-profit education, and then the entrepreneurial space. I have 2 education companies. And what I see on the one hand is maybe it's that traditional education organizations are kind of full of bloat. And this is kind of a common critique of American institutions. And so they're, as far as online education, some schools are finally kind of getting into that space here in America, but it's been 20 years. I was one of the first educators in America, among the first wave of educators to be a part of online education about 20 years ago. And now some schools are beginning to build out their online programs. I think part of the Indo-American solution here is online and entrepreneurial. Not to say there's not a great space for the traditional organizations, and my colleagues here I'm sure will discuss that in better detail. But I'm viewing it more as an entrepreneur who can move quickly in the space and provide, what I do is provide writing instruction for students who wish access to the global marketplace. And so, so I can build that online, bring educators, American educators, writers, professors, the top of the line. I have no overhead. I can pay them I can pay them really well and bring that education, import it to Indian students who need it. And so I'm kind of in a slivering kind of way answering the question of how I feel that solution should go, how we can develop those kinds of contacts. And it does come from a kind of online. I remember 20 years ago, online tech was basically you stick that camera on top of the bezel of your computer, and then you didn't have any bandwidth, so you could never have this. This is great, right? This conversation is amazing. And now we have the pandemic, and so really for the first time, we can begin to have real, relationships. The online classroom can almost approximate what happens on ground now for the first time because of that technology. And then this is all kind of brand new. Yeah. So how long does it take for people to take advantage of that and to make those connections? That's kind of the question that I always ask myself. And so as an entrepreneur, I'm trying to, solve those problems quickly.
Yeah. No, I think you're on a very good point. We've seen that when we work with a lot of edtech companies. In fact, we're seeing it both ways. We're seeing a lot of Indian edtech companies doing reasonably well in the US. You see the examples of White Hat and Baiju. You see the example of Upgrad, Great Learning, etc., where we're using actually the Indian academia and also, the Indian service model and applying it to customers in US. We are also seeing the likes of Coursera, edX, etc. Use the programs that they have here. And in fact, outside of US, India is one of the largest markets, at least as far as traffic is concerned. It doesn't convert necessarily into revenue. And again, their price points and affordability becomes an issue. And I think we should pick this thread again later during our discussion on this panel. But lobbing the question back to the bloated sort of the part of education where the Dr. Corey talked about. Michael, what do you think? Why is it that? What would it take for for India to attract some of these global institutions, especially the top-ranked ones, to come to India? Is it even feasible? Is that something that we should even go after? Should we look rather to, instead of the top 100 to have a large scale here, look for something like 300 to 400 ranked institutions to have a reasonable scale here?
Good. Well, Danish, thank you for the question and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Very provocative and very interesting conversation. I will gladly, maybe even proudly, take on the mantle of the bloated educational establishment for a couple of reasons. First, because it's very important to remember higher education in the United States is large and diverse. There are 5,000 institutions. There are 22 million students enrolled in higher education in the US. Now, the number of students enrolled in the kinds of institutions that you know about and are aspiring to bring to India represent a tiny fraction of that. So again, the very large, very diverse set of institutions. Yes, they're the Dukes and the Cornells and the Ohio States and the Georgia Techs and the Harvards and the Yales, but they represent a very, very small fraction of the enrollment. Second thing is that over the last century, a number of American universities have both sought opportunities to establish some sort of presence or connection in India, or have been invited to and recruited or asked to do that. And as you have pointed out, and as Ryan pointed out earlier, the regulatory structure, the infrastructure in India has made that very, very difficult. I personally have made several trips to India on behalf of Duke University over the last 10 years to develop and facilitate and explore opportunities. It's just been, bottom line, it's just been a very, very difficult, almost impossible environment for American universities to establish the kind of presence and the kind of scale that would be necessary. The third thing that I'll say is that you mentioned I know the India policy is based on the top 100 universities in the world, which is a very which should be the aspiration for India given its size and influence. Those institutions, and I'm proud to represent one of them, are very, very conscious of and have a very deliberative process for determining where to make the kinds of investments of both money and resources and time, but also credibility. We are very, and they are very, very valuable brands, and we get courted all the time by countries and by entrepreneurs and businesses and others to establish a presence. This is a very lengthy and deliberative process that involves very deep consideration. We have Duke University has a joint venture university in China called Duke Kunshan University that opened in 2014 and enrolled its first undergraduates in 2018. That was a 10-year process that we went through to deliberate the academic feasibility and the political feasibility and the financial feasibility. And that was with a very, very well-resourced partner. So these, and you can say the same thing for the NYU in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, Northwestern in Abu Dhabi. These are very lengthy, detailed processes. because what both partners are bringing to it is this is not just setting up a website. With all due respect to Dr. Conway, he has very low overhead for the professors from places like Duke and elsewhere, because we're doing that. So he doesn't have to provide their health insurance or the structure or the maintaining the brand or the technology network or selecting the graduate students and everything else. So there is the opening up of the marketplace where there are companies that can package and present these kinds of assets, as well as the individual institutions, is huge. And will be transformative. But let's not forget, somebody had to make the investment to bring those institutions and to bring those people to the forefront. So I would say it's a multifaceted issue. I would not be overly optimistic that the leading universities are going to rush in immediately. Yeah, the last thing I'll say is the pandemic has presented us with multiple challenges and opportunities. One of the challenges is that we are all looking at probably a major change in the financial underpinning of what we do and of residential education. On the other hand, we are also getting into direct, both individually and through consortia and collaborations that wouldn't have been possible before, the idea of providing online education and online services in a new and dynamic way. So I think all that's to say, there is an unlimited, I think, opportunity and horizon for India. It may not be a U.S. university, a prestigious U.S. university, coming in and building a campus. I think there'll be different permutations of that.
No, I absolutely agree, and we've seen that in our work as well. That just the hurdle that a prestigious top 100 university, for example, would need to cross, like I said, both financially and even from assurances on various aspects of, freedom in, curricula, etc., and, making sure that the value systems are it's too high. And by the time you clear, let's say, the financial hurdle, it then becomes almost unviable for students back in India then to, enroll for those programs in terms of the fee, or you need a very strong financial backer in terms of government. So I hear that there are legitimate concerns why some of these universities, most of these universities, find it difficult to come to India. Professor Gandhi, then moving on from that, do you think India should, have a sort of multi-pronged or a two-pronged strategy at least, which is, yes, let's try to look for the top 100 and see how we can increase our interaction with them and see how we can get them over a period of time. But maybe what we also need are some of the more teaching universities as well, to come in and bring in, innovations there and have, larger campuses with, good quality engineers coming, in thousands out of those universities. So that's one question to you. Two, you've seen, how the system in India works and some of the challenges. What are your thoughts on what could be done?
Yeah. So Dennis, what John and Professor Michael mentioned, I will add why we do not see so many foreign universities, especially from the US, in India. I'll share with you a couple of experiences we had. We have arrangements of term exchanges with about 70 global universities, and we have a dual degree program with 5 universities globally. But the movement of the students between US and India is very, very limited. One of the major issues which our students have found is visa issue when they want to travel for a term exchange as well as for a dual degree program. So that has been a major concern of our students. And the other thing, relative to European universities, they find that going for term exchange or for a dual degree program in the US university works out to be costlier for them. So that is a major question. We are, as you know, that we are bound by the government policies as far as salaries to faculty are concerned. But with the IAM Act 2017, we have a freedom. We can decide how much compensation we want to give to foreign faculty, right? We have invited chair professorship globally, but very few professors are willing to come to India and spend, let's say, a period of 3 to 5 years, because then they will have to compromise a lot of financial as well as the other perquisites which they would have. So what we decided, we will have a chair professorship for a limited tenure. You can come 3 months in a year or 6 months in a year and spend time here, and we will take care of all your requirements of the honorarium, etc. But that's not coming up very positively. Now our alumni has decided to set up a 1 billion Indian rupees fund, precisely to attract global faculty members to come and spend some time at the institute for both teaching in long duration programs, including PhD doctoral programs, do a collaborative research on the contemporary issues, not only restricted to India, but the neighboring countries, and also to develop a very strong or strengthen our PhD program. Because I think the major limitation in the area of management discipline in India is a absence of strong PhD programs. We have IIMs, we have ISB who are offering such PhD programs, but our intake is very limited. We can't admit more than 20 or 25 doctoral students per year. So these are some of the challenges. The other point what Professor Michael mentioned about financial viability is very important. See, at present, our fee for a 2-year MBA program is 2.2 million Indian rupees. But what about the ROI as far as student is concerned? You know, IIM Ahmedabad completes the placement in 3 days' time. All 445 students are placed in 3 days' time, right? But the most important part is that, yes, people are happy with the median salary, but what about the salaries being available to the bottom 5% of the students? They're not even able to meet their EMI requirements. So that's a financial burden. So if any top global university has to come up with a long duration program in India, the financial viability is going to be a major concern. I see only one possible areas where there could be a lot of presence, and we had a formal collaboration with Duke earlier, is in the domain of executive education. That is a big market. And right now, executive education or a very important leadership training programs, etc., are being seen by Indian corporates as retainer strategy. That you have to retain the talent. How do you retain the talent, right? You identify their competency requirements and build those competencies for higher positions through interventions in executive education. And they are looking for the faculty members who have a global perspective. So not only from India, but they would also be very willing to come up with a joint executive education programs with the foreign universities. For example, when we were doing the program for senior IAS officers, those who have put in about 20 years of service, we had a formal collaboration with Kennedy School, Harvard University. And we did these programs for several years. So I think there are, and I do not want to repeat what Professor Michael mentioned about regulatory framework. That's also another issue. Now, in spite of the fact that we are under the purview of IIM Act, we still have certain boundaries to be maintained, right? And we cannot cross these boundaries. And I'm sure that would be very difficult for foreign universities to maintain those regulatory requirements.
No, thank you so much. The point that you mentioned about research and faculty, you're right. You would struggle to get a lot of foreign faculty to come to India. And I think it's not just about the salaries and the perks. It's also because I don't think in India we're doing enough research generally to be able to sustain a career progression or aspiration from an academic perspective of a top priority, for foreign faculty, and that is a struggle. Dr. Bhayankar, with your experience in this whole field of research, etc., do you think that's an area of collaboration where we could have with foreign universities, or should we focus more on that?
Yes, thank you, Danish, and thank you, IACC, for creating such a wonderful platform. It's an honor to be part of this August gathering. And I completely agree with what Professor Gandhi just mentioned. I believe unless we try and create a win-win situation, we will not be able to attract top American universities to come to India. Although we are talking at the most opportune time, we have new educational policy in place. The regulations are opening up, and this is the most opportune time. Probably Indian academia was never so open before. But having said that, unless and until we really bring back the research culture, we may not be able to create that win-win situation. And I would like to explain this by drawing similarities between one more sector. IT sector is very strong in US and also in India. And a lot of transaction happens in IT sector as well. However, if we closely look at what's happening in India, what we predominantly have is services, and we are predominantly into providing services. So the biggest IT company of Indian origin is TCS, which is Tata Consultancy Services. And you look at any giant IT company of Indian origin, we are predominantly into providing services. And moving from services to solutions to tools to frameworks to applications and finally into a product. Creating product company is a long journey. And in US, on the other side, you have a lot of product companies. And that's why, although there is huge traction, a lot of transaction happening between US companies and Indian companies, it's not truly a win-win kind of a situation. And so although there are a lot of opportunities, we should take this with a pinch of salt. Otherwise, there'll be similar kind of traction, and we will have a lot of academic products that we might want to adapt to from the US. And the best practices will only keep providing services in India. That should not happen, and we should truly be able to create a win-win situation. And in my opinion, the crux is to bring back research culture. And we had research culture, but after imbibing the British kind of educational system, American system, in my opinion, is 180 degrees out of phase with the British educational system. Even where you drive on which side of the road is completely opposite. What makes the switch turn on and turn off electricity is also exactly opposite. So probably we should look into bringing back more conceptual, more research-oriented education in India, so that we'll be able to truly create a win-win situation.
Yeah. No, interesting point to everyone. Would the panel agree, and because I want to now change the direction of the conversation a little bit, would the panel agree that it's a little bit unrealistic right now, given the regulatory framework, given the the high barriers that the top 100 universities internally need to cross, the hurdles they need to jump? It's unrealistic to have any of these top 100 universities right now in India anytime soon. If that's the case, as we think of India-US education corridor, can I flip it and say, how do we then, and taking from Dr. Abhyankar's example of the IT sector, how do we become exporters of education services in India rather than importers? So, and Dr. Conway talked about EdTech. We're seeing some very promising EdTech companies in India, right? All the way from pre-K to higher ed, and we're working in all sorts of direction. Why do you think the more reasonable discussion to have is how do we create the next sort of services giants like TCS out of India servicing the US education market? Dr. Conway?
So if you permit, Danish, I would just respond by saying that I agree with you that to have top global universities to be present in India on their own is going to be a difficult task. But I see a lot of opportunities for a collaboration with selected universities and institutions, especially now the category of institutions of national importance or institutions of eminence, both in technology as well as in management disciplines. I think I see a lot of scope there. And the scope should begin with coming together in long duration programs of teaching as well as the research. And I'm sure that Indian universities, because of the NIRF rankings or because of the global rankings, they have understood the importance of research and what proportion of research they should have in confirmation or in promotion of the faculty members. I think people have realized that, and now universities and institutions are moving in that direction. Now, another point of exporters, I think the top can be shifted outside India. I see, since we have been in Dubai for several years now, I see a lot of opportunities of collaboration in the places outside India where you can address to global participation. And you can have not only in Dubai, but also in other places where one can look at a joint collaboration between Indian institutions as well as the US institutions.
Agree, Professor Gandhi. I agree with you that the recognition of need for research is definitely there. Whether the infrastructure and the funding for these institutions is available for the same is, is another sort of question. Dr. Conway, very quickly, I think just as a quick time check, I think what we'll do is we will try to wrap this up in another 5-7 minutes. Then we'll take some questions from the audience. And then Professor Gandhi, I think you have a very interesting presentation for us as well, which you could go to. But Dr. Conway?
Maybe to hit on what Mr. Schoenfeld mentioned before regarding kind of the way academia is structured now at the faculty level. And I think, all right, so in short, I think the American universities have a lot of work to do on themselves. I think we're in a kind of transition. So what Mr. Schoenfeld said, I think is true in that, creating or building a campus, across the Atlantic is high risk. And right now, I don't see how that would work. I see a flight of faculty from traditional universities, not Duke, obviously, not Duke, right? But there's Duke, and then there are a lot of mid-tier schools and universities that the way that faculty are treated now, we're losing talent. The traditional schools are losing talent. They're becoming entrepreneurs. They're going into different fields. I've told my kids, I don't know if you should go to academia. Which isn't to say it's all going to collapse. I'm just saying that there are some issues like that are pandemic to the structure of how things are done in America. That's again why I view some of the solutions as being not in the realm anymore of traditional ed, and more in the realm of the entrepreneurs. Even some of the for-profits, the for-profits have been critiqued over the years, and they should be in some ways, but there are a lot of good for-profit institutions doing a lot of good work in niche areas like nursing. Dinesh, you mentioned culinary in one of your interviews, and those kinds of fields, and that's good work to do. I mean, the American educational system is so tiered that it's hard to say one thing about Duke, and then you have the for-profits, and then you have and so it is kind of a complex pot of stuff.
Yeah, Dinesh, if I could just add to that, I didn't want to. I hope I didn't come off. I hope I didn't end up sounding too pessimistic, because I actually do believe the kinds of targeted partnerships that are really partnerships among equals with Indian institutions, particularly in research areas, in executive education, in technology. I think those opportunities with the top universities are going to be limitless, frankly, given the opportunities for the intellectual firepower in India and the relations with the United States. I think those are they're just going to look very different from what we might have thought about even just a few years ago about what it means to bring, as you have said, to bring an American university, to bring a global university to India, or to bring an Indian university to the U.S. I think that the idea of the large campus with the huge capital investment is always going to be there at some point. And at some level, but there will be many, many more ways to spread the intellectual wealth.
Dr. Abhyankar, any thoughts from you on that?
I agree with the panelists. There is clearly a sense of diluting the brand, but at the same time, we should also look at the digital platforms. One thing that has definitely happened during this pandemic is the academia across the globe has hit a fast forward button. And what would have otherwise taken 5 to 6 odd years, it has happened in the last 5 to 6 odd months. And many Indian academic institutions, they have very matured Moodle platforms in place now. SPPU, that's Pune University, if you can see it as the backdrop of mine. We have partnered with Drexel University. We have partnered with IHE Delft, Netherlands, and we have been running joint degree programs with them. And now it's possible because the pandemic has really pushed all of us and we have kind of broken those barriers. So it's a blessing in disguise what has happened to academia at a global level. But I also agree that top universities will probably have this fear of diluting their brand. And that's why it has to be an organic growth. We have to grow gradually, slowly, systematically, probably start working with tier 3 universities, slowly moving to tier 1, and then start targeting the top institutions.
No, well said. So as concluding remarks on this, is there any, if let's say the goal was to have increased participation of, let's say the American universities in the Indian higher education system, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would like the Indian sort of administration or maybe the Indian universities do to quicken the process? Michael, Dr. Conway, or Dr. Aditya, any comments from you before I'll hand it over to Professor Gandhi to then take us through this presentation?
I would just reiterate the importance of building and strengthening to the greatest extent possible the culture of research and discovery and scholarship. That will be real. That will be more important than ever, I think, in developing these partnerships. I think also there's great seriousness being taken in the U.S., and there always has been, but I think there's increasing seriousness now about academic freedom and about the ability of students to learn and teachers to teach and scholars to do research. Without the fear or concern of censorship or any kind of state control. I think those kinds of things we're seeing them come up with around the world as areas of concern, and I think to the extent that the culture of connections and relationships with India reinforces India's commitment to that, it would be valuable as well.
Perfect. If there aren't any other comments from the panelists, then Saurabh or Raki, are there any questions which are there from the audience which we could take up?
Yes, Danish, there are a couple of questions posted on the chat box and the Q&A session. So would you?
Yeah, so there is one, and these are a little bit technical. So, I leave it to the panelists who is best placed to answer this. One is there a roadmap in curriculum design or setting up a collaborative research hub? I'm assuming, which is, as you think about partnerships there, probably Professor Gandhi, since you've had a lot of these experiences of collaborating, maybe you would like to throw some light on that.
Yeah, sure. So we have a process of preparation of a 5-year plan. And that 5-year plan is creating a roadmap in basically 3 areas. One is the academics, which involves teaching in long duration programs as well as in the executive education program. Second is research. Third is public policy and advocacy. So these are the 3 areas where we prepare a detailed plan, which also includes what kind of collaboration we are seeking from the other partnering institutions. We also source which are the institutions where we can have a kind of a common interest to pursue a particular sponsored research projects or a collaborative research projects, as well as inviting the eminent faculty from foreign universities to be guides for our PhD students, and also to participate in variety of government assignments and projects which are related to advocacy and public policy. So yes, we do have a roadmap and we review that because it's a requirement as a part of our EQUIS accreditation and as well as for our various ranking purposes. So yes, we do have a roadmap where we constantly, and I'm glad to share with you that earlier Professor Shrikant Datar from Harvard was on our board, and right now Professor Pradeep Chintagunta from Booth School, Chicago is also on our board. So we do have representation of these leading academicians on our board, which help us to prepare this kind of a 5-year roadmap as a part of the planning process.
Lovely. Thank you, Professor Gandhi. There. One last question that I see here is on industry academia partnerships and how important could they be? Do you think how do you think about that? One is, of course, within the country, but do you think that's also a way of increasing collaboration between the India-US sort of corridor, where industry from one and the academia from the other would also start collaborating? Is that happening, or is that
yes,
not needed?
So when I come to industry academia networking, I will look at from 2 perspectives. One is to develop a teaching material, right? So as you know that many of the institutions in India now follow case method of learning. And probably because of the historical, as far as IIM Ahmedabad is concerned, our formal collaboration with Harvard Business School for 6 years initially. So I think one of the important sources of developing the contemporary cases to be taught in the classroom, industry academic networking is very, very essential. So this is one area. The second area is the internship and the placement. They are also 2 important dimensions where we have a lot of relationship with the corporates outside India, right? We have a lot of internships being done by our students outside India with the US companies, and US companies predominantly in financial services sector, as well as the final placements. So I look at these kind of networking from these 2 areas.
Interesting. Great.
Can I add quickly something?
Sure.
I honestly believe that I honestly believe that good product companies in US is because of a very strong tie-up between industry and academia. And it's very important to have that industry academia connect. For example, I work at Department of Technology, and my department was founded just to have this platform where we can bring industry and academia on the same page. We have 70 plus industry partners on page with us. Almost 50% of my students are working professionals, and unless and until we provide the flexibility in academia, we will not be able to attract good industry relationship. And that's the way to move forward, according to me. At the same time, as we are talking about creating a win-win situation, we should also not forget about the strengths of our country. When it comes to philanthropy, Ayurveda, yoga, and huge young population that we have in our country. Just a quick reminder to all the audiences, it was in 1893 and it was 9/11 when Swami Vivekananda uttered those golden words in All Religion Assembly at Chicago. And unfortunately, it was the same day when the terrorist attack took place in 2001. So these are the strong areas of our country, the spiritualism and humanitarian approach and philanthropy and so on and so forth, which is also going to play very vital role in forming these ties with top American institutions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Abhyankar. So, with that, we will end the panel discussion. I will hand it over to Professor Gandhi, who has an interesting presentation to make. I would once again, on behalf of the panel, my fellow panelists, would like to thank IACC. Also, would like to thank all the audience who've been kind enough to listen to this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, so Dennis, what I will do is majority of the points of my presentation are covered. So I will just focus on some of the critical areas which I would like to share. Yeah. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Sir, if you can do it full screen, sir, please.
yeah, I've already done that as a full screen. Just a minute. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
So basically, when I look at the opportunities, I look at the opportunities in 4 areas: academics, research and case writing, public policy and advocacy, and advisory services and consulting. Academics, as I was discussing already, I have already discussed about long duration academic programs, dual degree, term exchanges, visiting faculty, engagement in master's and doctoral programs, executive education, jointly design and deliver programs in anywhere, where we can have focus on sectoral specialized general management programs. And Dr. Abhyankar already mentioned about the blended learning programs like online programs. We are offering both synchronous as well as asynchronous blended learning programs, especially in the domain of executive education. Research and case writing, collaborative research projects, sponsored research projects, as well as case writing, and again, variety of sectoral and functional focus. Public policy advocacy is also one of our strong areas. For example, short, long duration programs in public policy and public services management, collaborative research in this domain, and government-sponsored research projects, impact of studies of various governmental schemes. That is also a very, very emerging and very, very dominant area. That government has announced several schemes and they would like to have a impact assessment study that how this various schemes have affected marginally poor and the other sectors of the society. Advisory services and consulting across sectors, which will create opportunities for customized education programs as well as development of cases. And as I discussed, there are 2 modes of having this kind of presence of the foreign universities from US and other places. One is collaboration. Benefits to the foreign partners: no gestation period, no huge investment, commencement of activities very quickly, strengthening of the brands of both the partners, and can also customize areas for collaboration. Benefits to Indian partners: strengthening of the brand of both the partners, value addition for the students and faculties to also helps in improving national and international rankings as well as international accreditation. However, challenges: identification of right partners, right, degrees of freedom, which the collaboration would provide under the regulatory framework, visa issues, financial arrangements. These are some of the challenges in going for a collaboration route. The other route is standalone presence. Now, the benefits to the US universities: complete freedom to decide on program portfolio or scope of offerings, building own brand, being in India, can also consider markets in neighboring countries. However, there are several challenges which we have already mentioned: longer time to establish the base and program offerings, huge investment, continuity of leadership for a longer duration, recruitment of faculty in the Indian campuses. That's also going to be a challenge. Now, currently, I want to share with you, especially in the areas of management education, demand for 2-year pre-experience management program is likely to continue because it's a legacy program. Recruitment practices of the corporate sector have evolved around this model, and HR heads are happy with the experience or outcomes. These graduates have no prior baggage and can be molded into corporate culture of the recruiting companies. There is a perception that 2-year program compensates for lack of experience. So in the near future, 2-year MBA program is going to be there, though the experience in Europe and other places shows other way around. But still, very leading US universities have continued with a 2-year MBA program. Also, growing demand for 1-year post-experience MBA, widespread acceptance by recruiters as the program is being offered for more than 15 years, appealing to those recruiters who do not have their own induction programs and go for lateral hiring from 2-year MBA programs. The prior experience is seen as compensating for the duration of the program. And there are 2 possible sub-segments which are emerging. One with the 3 to 5 year experience, which is an ISB model, and greater than 7 years of experience, which is a IM model. General management versus specialized programs, that's also emerging, right? Demand for specialized programs in data sciences, in the financial sector, as well as in software. Sectoral programs, for example, food and agribusiness management, pharma management. Again, the choice between online versus on-campus programs. But then there are issues related to fee structure, affordability, bank loans, the median salaries and ability to pay EMIs. And there is a need for strong PhD programs. Yeah, this is what I wanted to share as a part of possible opportunities which are available in the current context. Thank you.
Thank you, Danish, and all the panelists. We really had very, very interesting and engaging panel discussion. I hope all our participants are really benefited by today's discussion. I'm happy to share that today we have Ms. Anita Nainen from Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce with us. She is chairperson and immediate past president of Georgia Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. And in her professional capacity, she is a dual licensed attorney admitted to practice in state of Georgia and certified lawyer admitted to practice in India. She is a founder and principal attorney of Nainen Legal LLC. She focuses her practice on corporate business and immigration law. I would invite Ms. Anita Nainen to say a few words and propose vote of thanks to all our guests and speakers.
Thank you, Pankaj. It is my great privilege and honor to present the vote of thanks on this occasion. As chairperson of GIACC, I'd just like to say a few words about our chamber. We've been in operation for about 20 years, of course, less than IACC. And our primary purpose is to promote and foster Indo-US business opportunities, specifically between India and the state of Georgia. So we collaborate on networking events with local business chambers as well as international chambers, including IACC, on various issues and sectors, whether it be manufacturing, tourism, logistics, immigration, or the film industry. We also partner with the Consulate General of India in Atlanta to host delegations between India and Georgia. As Pankaj mentioned, on my professional front, I'm a US business immigration attorney. And so I am indeed very pleased with the new Indian education policy, which seeks to standardize the Indian post-secondary education system to offer the 4-year Indian bachelor's degree program. This will indeed help Indian highly skilled professionals to more easily establish their academic credentials for the H-1B work permit program, as well as employment-based immigrant visas towards US permanent residency. On the other hand, I think, as I think Dr. Gandhi had pointed out, there is still work to do at the other end, at our end here in the US, so that the US visas are made more easily available to dual Indian-US programs, so that Indian students can come and do a portion of their programs here in the US at US universities. So just looking at the number of Indian students here in the US, over the last decade, we have had a huge increase in the number of students studying in the US. It was almost like 202,000 in 2019. And of course, Indian students contribute to US colleges and universities of over $8 billion. So indeed, I think the new education policy is welcome. Though, of course, as our panelists have, in the panel discussion, we did hear there will be, there are challenges, but of course, opportunities as well. First and foremost, I would like, on behalf of IACC and GIACC, to thank our Mr. Ryan Pereira, who gave us a wonderful insight into USIEF and the various initiatives that have been taken by the organization while supporting local students to pursue education in the US. I also express my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Danish Faruqi, partner, LEK Consultancy, for being a very dynamic moderator, asking all the appropriate questions, and steering a very useful discussion on addressing challenges, bottlenecks, as well as opportunities available in the India-US corridor on education. I would also like to express my gratitude to the distinguished panelists, Professor Shailesh Gandhi, Mr. Michael Schoenfeld, Dr. Aditya Abhyankar, and Dr. John Conway, for sharing your insights on this very important topic. Thank you for such an invigorating discussion. I would also like to thank the audience for giving us such an overwhelming response to this digital session. The success of this series would be incomplete without our kind partners' contributions. We cannot thank you all enough. I would like to mention our associate partner once again, Ascent Overseas Education. Thank you very much specifically to Mr. Atul Nishar, Mr. Rajesh Kanani, and Mr. Shailesh Shah for your generous contribution. Our other associate partner is, of course, Lions Club International Foundation. Thank you so much to Mr. Eric Brejla for all your support. Last but not least, on behalf of GIACC, I would like to thank Mr. Pankaj Bora, Regional President, IACC, West India Council, for conceiving of this brilliant event with the goal of strengthening Indo-US trade ties, and for giving us the opportunity to partner in this webinar. I would also like to acknowledge the unwavering support received from the IACC Regional Vice President and Program Chair, Mr. Saurabh Shah, for supporting us in this initiative in every possible way. Thank you, Saurabh. So once again, thank you all for your attention. And now I would like to take your permission to end the program here. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. So once again, thank you on behalf of IACC to all our guests.
Thank you very much. It was a nice interaction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anita.
Bye.
Thank you all the panelists. Just one announcement I would like to make. We have got a couple of requests on the chat box requesting for the presentation and the recording. What we will do is we will share the record. This is live on YouTube. The entire session was live. So you will any which ways get it on our IACC YouTube channel. However, we will also share the link of the YouTube channel with all of you, along with the presentations that we have today. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.